Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 12th of May, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have Ben Rubin with me in the studio. And we're joined by Diane Rasmussen-McCaddy via live link. And we're also very, very pleased to have a guest with us for today's news. Now, I'd just like to say weather over the weekend, just complete contrast. We had some really lovely sunny weather. The government wasn't too happy about that, so there were a few warnings, which we'll cover later in the news. And then that was followed in Plymouth at least by a downpour. But we've survived, amazingly. So the news today, we're going to get on to hot topics, and the key topic is immigration, now known by the BBC as migration, but that must be just a change of emphasis by the BBC. But I'd like to say to the audience, the UK column is absolutely going to stay on target with the change agenda. We believe that if we're to make any progress through politics, we have to understand what's really going on and who is driving it. Now, last Monday's news, I focused on Keir Starmer. Let's get him back up on screen. And the key bit here is that, of course, what Labour is doing, what Keir Starmer is doing, is talking about change. We've seen this through the Tories as well, but it's the change agenda which is doing the destruction in UK. Repeated change effectively equals revolution. And I put up this diagram on screen saying that we needed to stay abreast of the fact that we've got UK locked into a 100-year pact with Ukraine. We've no idea really what this means, or what people are involved, or what their political opinions are, or indeed their morality. We're locked into a memorandum of understanding with Israel. Then we've got the EU still in the background, which clearly we've never left, Brexit without the exit. And Keir Starmer had talked about preferring Davos to Westminster. Now, if I just add in one more section to bring us up to date, of course, the big thing in the news over the weekend and today in particular is immigration. And I had a little banner last Monday, and I'm going to put that banner up again and say, will reform actually grip these issues? Now, they're in a good place because of the success in the local elections. And we know a lot of people worked very, very hard. So there are opportunities, but there are also threats. And the key threat, as far as the column is concerned, is will the leadership of reform grip the realities about what's driving politics? Now, here's the hot topic of migration, and let's just have a look at Yvette Cooper, if we can pop that one up on screen, please. So here she is on the BBC, and she's talking about dealing with migration, immigration, but she says it's time to end care worker recruitment from abroad. So suddenly we've gone from rubber boats to the big problem of care workers. Let's have a listen and a look at what she said.
Well, what we're doing is it's a fundamental shift in the approach to say that the immigration system should be properly linked to skills and training here in the UK. What you saw on that chart was really this failed free market experiment with which the Conservatives replaced free movement, where employers were effectively encouraged to recruit from wherever they wanted to, including they actually had a 20% discount on wages if they recruited from overseas rather than training here in the UK. Well, that is a broken approach, and that's why we saw overseas recruitment saw training being cut. We're switching that round and now saying we'll bring in new visa controls, particularly on the lower skilled migration, to bring that down, and also new requirements for workforce strategies, for training commitments, and for that better working to get people who are not working back into the labour market here in the UK.
So I think many people might listen to that clip and say a lot of waffle. What is she really talking about? And of course, the reality is that Yvette Cooper dare not talk about the reality of what's going on. The figures, or the latest figures, 728,000 net immigration into UK ending June, in the year ending June 2024. So this is a massive figure. Ukraine has been a big part of that extraordinary figure. But if we put one of the diagrams from the government itself on screen here, the thing I want to emphasize for people is that small boat arrivals at 37,000, this is a drop in the ocean. And the whole time that everybody focuses on the boats, what they are not doing is focusing on the reality of how this system works, with people pouring into the country on all sorts of study and work visas. And of course, many of them taking jobs away from people who are already living in UK. If we have a look at some of the forms of visas, this is another graph here. Study visas, over 400,000. Work visas, about 370,000. Then we have families. These are the massive, massive figures of people coming into the country. So I just highlight those two top ones. And then on top of this, if we get in and have a look a bit more of the breakdown here. Apologies, I've lost the logo of the source of this. We'll correct that in the show notes. But this is applications for health and care visas and study visas in the year ending December 2022 to November 2024. And down at the bottom of your screen, you can see health and care. That's in the purple and the blue line, which are peaking at over 250,000 and then dropping to over 100,000. Now, something that's not talked about, although it does emerge in the figures, is that we have the International Labour Organization at work. And if you've never heard of them, well, you need to know about them because they're doing an amazing job, in inverted commas. Let's have a listen to this video clip.
In 2022, the number of international migrants reached almost 285 million. Of these, nearly 168 million were actively contributing to the labor force. This means that international migrants play a crucial role in the global economy. In 2022, they made up almost 5% of the total labor force. Most were living in high-income countries. The regions hosting the majority of migrants in the labor force were in Northern, Southern, and Western Europe, Northern America, and the Arab states. So, what are these migrant workers doing? Most employed international migrants were in the services sector. The sector accounts for more than 80% of employed migrant women. In particular, the care economy benefits from international migrants in the labor force, especially women migrants. Almost 1 in 3 of employed women migrants are in care jobs, compared to 1 in 5 of non-migrant women. Learn more about the realities and challenges of migrant workers. Check out the latest ILO Global Migration Report.
So when we look at UK statistics, we automatically start to see the International Labour Organization at work in its production of statistics, and huge figures globally. This is some of their stats. Migrants, 255.7 million worldwide, with 167.7 million in the labour force worldwide. Then we can take a quick look at the peaks here. So the peaks are in Northern America and also into Northern and Southern and Western Europe, with 23% for Europe. But this is the key point, that UK is working in partnership with this organisation. So there should be no surprises that UK is continuing to keep this migration running. And this routine has been going since 1919, if we have a look at the chronology from the International Labour Organization itself. There are penalties to what's happening. This is the Nursing Times from 2007, where it was admitting that patients were very upset by not being able to understand what nurses and doctors were saying around them. And this is going back to 2011, where Theresa May was having to admit that there were problems in integration, and this was causing difficulties, including with security. So she said, we'll do more than any other government before us to promote integration. The agenda is not stopping migration and immigration. The agenda is to facilitate it. And this is very clear across all three parties. And at which point we say, is it party politics that's driving the agenda, or are we dealing with something deeper? And at that point, I'd like to welcome Diane on screen, because Diane, you have been looking in depth at what's been happening with powerful organisations such as the Fabians.
Yes, thanks, Brian. Hello, Ben. It's good to be here today to talk about this. I've been looking in particular at the Fabians. There are a lot of organizations around the world that are basically hidden in plain sight. And I want to, at this point, welcome Professor Gloria Moss as my guest today. She wrote an article for a UK column that was published a few weeks ago called "The Secret Society Dedicated to a New World Order, the Fabians." And it's got some phenomenal responses from viewers, from other people on the UK column team, and it really exposed quite a bit. So at this point, I'd like to invite Professor Moss into the program and maybe just summarize a bit about your article, and then let's talk about how this is relevant to what we're talking about today in the news. So hello, Gloria. Welcome to UK column.
Hi, Diane. It's great to be on the show.
So if you want to just go ahead and go through a little bit of your article and kind of how you got to this article, how you reached this. I know as your editor that you started looking at the assisted dying bill, and that somehow led you to this Fabian organization. Do you want to maybe talk a little about the process and what you learned as you were going through the writing?
Well, yes. My way in, as you say, was the assisted dying bill, which is awaiting its third vote in Parliament. And I noticed deep concerns from numerous sources, including concerns from the SPUC Society, the Protection of the Unborn Child, who highlighted the extent to which the bill put vulnerable people at risk, the fact that assisted dying could not be controlled easily, that assisted dying would undermine palliative care, and that the purported pretext for the bill, terminal illness and intractable pain, were not, in fact, the leading causes of assisted dying in other countries, because, of course, there are many other countries that have introduced similar bills, and we have a lot of experience to draw on, including a US study, 2015, that said that there was a link between assisted dying legislation and a 6% increase in suicides across the board, more than doubling amongst the 65 plus age group to 14.5% of suicides, creating an increased inclination to suicide. Well, this is horrific. And then I came across an article by Dawn Lester. Do look out her Substack article, listing out the drugs that would be used that would create brain death, not death, would provide the perfect climate, perfect conditions for organ harvesting. And then there was a committee appointed to look into the bill, where the committee, 23 MPs strong, 14 proponents, only 9 opponents. So many safeguards were voted away. And there was selective calling of witnesses. Brilliant article on that by Unheard. And just before the bank holiday, the government released a report talking about savings to the NHS over a 10-year period from assisted dying of £60 million. Perhaps they timed it so that not too many people would notice in the run-up to the bank holiday. So that was all pretty horrific. So I started to look more into that, only to discover that many of the main players are members of the Fabian Society. Not least the proponent of the bill, Kim Leadbeater. She spoke at a Fabian Women's Network conference in September last year, and she wrote a report under their imprint. And then there were 2 ministers on the committee, which is more than usually find in a private member's bill. That's Sarah Sackman and Stephen Kinnock. Sarah Sackman, Minister for Courts and Legal Services, indubitably a Fabian. She was elected to the Executive Committee of the Fabian Society over 4 years. That's 2015 to 2019. And the other minister, what do you think of that? This fact, he's Minister for Care and a proponent of an assisted dying bill. That's Stephen Kinnock. He was author of a Fabian report and speaker with other Fabians at Fabians events. So his father, Neil, I believe was a Fabian, so maybe he's followed in his father's footsteps. And of course, presiding over all of this is the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and he's a Fabian in line with all Labour Party Prime Ministers. In July, if you wanted evidence, 2024, the Fabian Society itself referred to working with a Fabian Prime Minister. So that was my wake-up call, really. And I thought, what is it with the Fabian Society that's so top-heavy in the assisted dying bill? And so I thought I'd do some more research. And of course, with such an important topic, it's really vital to use evidence-based critical thinking. And actually, that's the subject of a book that I wrote with second author Catherine Armitage. And it's called Light Bulb Moments and the Power of Critical Thinking. It's a weapon we all have in our minds, brilliantly exemplified by UK Column. And so I adopted that approach, evidence-based, very important because I hadn't been taught anything about Fabian Society at school, nor in university, and I've been to university several times for first, second, and third degrees, and not surprising perhaps because mainstream school and university is not necessarily where we might go for truth. Truth University Press has published a book on that subject, The Dark Side of Academia, How Truth is Suppressed. So one shouldn't perhaps be too surprised. And certainly if you're interested in that book or the critical thinking book, you can get them from the website of Truth University, which is www.truthuniversity.co.uk. They're both good reads, by the way. Now, we shouldn't be too surprised if we didn't know about it, as I say, because mainstream education it hasn't always been there in recent decades to tell us the whole truth and nothing but the truth, anything but. But increasing the difficulties was the fact that the Fabians themselves, their original crest, many of you may know this, was in fact a wolf in sheep's clothing. So their objectives were overtly cloaked. They didn't mean the public to know too much about them, I think. And so I set off, armed with critical thinking, in search of information. And some of this information, much of it, you can find in the article that I wrote for UK Column. And from that, you can glean that the Fabian Society has broadly three main policies, three main parts to its agenda. And one is indicated in the title of the article, the creation of a new world order. That means the destruction, doesn't it, of the status quo. And we can see this exemplified in the stained glass window, currently in the London School of Economics. That was one of the places I did postgraduate studies. You can see it exemplified in the stained glass window that was designed by none other than playwright Bernard Shaw. Now, if you look carefully, you can see two characters on the right. Let's just go back to the stained glass window in terms of the image. There are two figures there on the right. They are destroying the world. And the man on the right in green is Bernard Shaw. And lurking behind, you may cast a glimpse, is that crest of the wolf in sheep's clothing. So this is their agenda, to destroy the world and create something different. What tools have they been using? Well, Brown has mentioned immigration, and that has been, it seems, a major tool in their weaponry. And so former Fabian Society chair, Roy Jenkins, some of you may remember him, he promoted multiculturalism and cultural diversity, so-called, deprioritizing the indigenous culture. And such an agenda was followed by the Blair-Brown administrations. And some commentators have suggested that Fabian Labour policy, because that's what we have to call it, I think, Fabian Labour policy, was designed to actually change the ethnic and racial makeup of British society, coming close to an act of genocide, some people might say. And note that the current Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who has been chair of the Scottish Fabian Commissioners, is sitting there as Home Secretary. And I don't see too much going on to stop, as Brian said, the immigration. So that's policy number one, creation of a new world order. Policy number two, eugenics. Many of the founding members were in favour of a eugenics agenda. Sidney Webb, with his wife Beatrice, in a book of 1911, The Prevention of Destitution, in a chapter of that book, they advocated a eugenics approach to solve the problems of poverty. Bernard Shaw, briefly a lecturer at the Eugenic Education Society, he wrote that, this is his quote, "Nothing but a eugenic religion can save our civilization from the fate that has overcome all previous civilizations." And that's not all. Brother of Aldous Huxley, Fabian, brother Julian Huxley, you can see a photo here. He was former chair of the British Eugenics Society. He even advocated for transhumanism. He actually coined the term transhumanism and the idea that humans could be improved through science and technology.
Gloria, I'm going to say thank you very, very much for taking us through that. We have to move on at the moment. I hope you'll be joining us for extra at the end of today's news, and we can have a look at this in more detail. But you've absolutely taken us through the key things there. That basically we've got powers way beyond politics that are driving the policies that are having these disastrous effects on us today. And if we have any viewers who haven't read your article on the UK Column website, encourage people to go and do that. Now, Ben, you're going to take us a bit deeper into this because you've also been looking at the Fabian tortoise. What have you found?
Indeed, I have. Yes, thank you. And thank you for a fantastic article, Gloria. That was a great read, and I highly recommend anyone to go and have a look at it. I shared it on social media over the weekend, and I had some irate London School of Economics graduates in my messages telling me how wrong I was about their beloved Fabian Society. And actually, one of the things that you didn't quite get onto in your report there, you talked about the wolves in sheep's clothing, which I'm going to come back to, but also the mascot originally of the Fabian Society, or one of the mascots, was the tortoise. Very famously, when I strike hard. And I believe, can't prove it, but I think that this is probably borne out by the facts behind the scenes, that this is a direct reference that has been made by Tortoise Media, who we speak about a lot. The independent media organisation started in 2019 by some former BBC editors and top Obama officials and what have you. And I think that they are absolutely acting as wolves in sheep's clothing, most notably through the acquisition of The Observer, which we spoke about at the end of last year. So this has now happened. It has been embedded. James Harding from Tortoise Media has given the stirring leadership talk at the Tortoise Media office to the Observer editorial team to bring them on board, tell them about the future direction. And actually, to show you what I mean by this, like a direct reference to the wolf in sheep's clothing analogy, let's just have a little look at the Daily Sensemaker email, which was the flagship piece of communication coming out from Tortoise Media to its subscribers for the past several years. This is now flipped over to the Sensemaker at The Observer. Yeah, so they've done a total switcheroo in the background. The Observer, which has been going for about 150 years, the world's, I think it was the first Sunday newspaper, actually. It's been going for an extraordinarily long time. It's got a great reputation. Whether you agree with its politics or not, it is a respected masthead on the newsstand, and it has now been completely taken over by Tortoise Media. And I think that this is a wolf in sheep's clothing situation. And I suppose my question to Observer readers ultimately is, do you actually really understand what's happened here? Because I don't think that most of them will understand what's happened here, because the guy that I've mentioned who established Tortoise Media is that man on the left-hand side. That's James Harding, former BBC editor. He can be seen here at a Tortoise event from last year, maybe the year before, the Responsible AI Forum at Waddesdon. And Waddesdon is owned by the Rothschild Foundation. In fact, in his summary of that event, he personally thanked Lord Rothschild for the help in establishing the event as a partner. And as we've spoken about many times previously, the counterpart to the Rothschild Foundation in Israel is Yad Hanadiv. Yad Hanadiv was the institutional body that was used to fund the construction of the Israeli Knesset and the Supreme Court, which suggests to me that these wolves, the people currently committing acts of unspeakable atrocity in the Middle East right now and for the past number of decades, are actually now in control of the Observer, and actually beyond that of Guardian Media Group, because Guardian Media Group has gone into a strategic partnership with Tortoise as part of that acquisition. I think that we are looking at a prime example of the wolf in sheep's clothing methodology, approach, tactics, whether it's a direct Fabian link or not. I think that's what's happening here, right, with the Observer. And it's not just happening with the Observer. We've also got a similar thing going on at the BBC at the moment. We've spoken about the local democracy reporter scheme extensively over the past couple of years. I brought them up earlier on this year. They've just announced a new round of contracts that they put out. One of the people running this at the BBC is saying that the result of this process means that every part of the country will be covered by a local democracy reporter. So the BBC is paying the wages of journalists through 118 separate contracts across the whole of the UK that are then operated, that work for other news titles. BBC is the wolf, the local news titles are the sheep's clothing, essentially. Yeah. And the media, whether people realise it or not, is being very aggressively controlled and managed behind the scenes by international capital and the government. And I think we were really got to keep our eye on this.
Yeah, and it clearly it's way beyond politics, even a uniparty system. We see this thing everywhere and the tentacles are growing. Now, I'm just going to jump ahead to a video where Richard Tice was being asked some questions about immigration. If we could find that one, please, Mike. And the significance of this was that he'd been given quite a hard time, where he was ambushed with a question on Ukraine, but eventually he got onto the subject of immigration, and let's hear what he said.
Great. Let's talk about your plans and what you said. You want to appoint a minister for deportations. I think we've already got one of those, and that's called the Home Secretary. What would your minister for deportations do?
It's clearly not working, is it? It's clearly not working, is it? Because
yeah, but it's not the time. Is it
the reality is that we've just won by an absolute landslide the elections Thursday last week because people are raging furious about the levels of both illegal and legal immigration in this country. I mean, smashing the gangs is clearly failing. It's encouraging the gangs. We've got over 30% more illegal migrants crossing the Channel this year alone. And the quantity of removals is, frankly, a drop in the ocean. What the Labour Party is now working out and realising, they've got their immigration white paper, which we'll come on to, is that they've got a major problem because reform is leading in the polls because people want this issue sorted. They want the boats to stop. And frankly, I think the majority of this country agree with our policy. We need to freeze immigration because the way to get our economy, to answer your first question, the way to get our economy going is to freeze immigration, get wages up for British workers, train our own people, get our own people who are economically inactive back into work. We've got 9 million people economically inactive in this country.
Look, you criticise people like me, and specifically, for not treating you seriously, and I'm quite happy for you to do a victory lap, and because your people did very well. But that means that, we want to know, viewers want to know, what it is you would do. So, with respect, I'm asking you, what is the meaning of your central plan, the Minister for Deportation? What would that person do? What powers would he or she have that the Home Secretary doesn't have? How many deportations would you envisage?
When Nigel talked about that Minister for Deportations in a press conference a couple of weeks ago, he said we'd put more meat on the bone. And we'll be having a press conference in the next couple of weeks, putting meat on that bone. But the bottom line is, people want the people who are here illegally removed. People want foreign criminals who have committed crimes removed, full stop. The Labour Party is talking the talk. Will they actually walk the walk?
Well, I found that an exceptionally interesting interview, and the point that I'm making by showing the clip is that Richard Tice had the opportunity to be talking about what the real system around migration and immigration is and the scale of it, but he didn't do that. What he mentioned was the crossing the channel, the boats, the rubber boats coming across the channel, and he's talking about getting rid of immigrants who are in prison. This is a tiny, tiny fraction of the overall problem, and I think the key thing is that we've got to see parties like Reform or any of the other small parties that want to challenge migration and the immigration figures into UK, they've got to be talking about the system as it actually is, the complexities of it and the scale of it. It is no good staying on the emotive subject of rubber boats and prison. We've got to be looking at why we have numbers of over 700,000 coming into the country. This is clearly unsustainable. It can't work at any level, be it the NHS, the roads or schools. It cannot work. It is destabilising the country. So I will be waiting to see whether Richard Tice will actually get a grip of this. But let's remember that if we've got a Labour government in post at the moment, that originally it was the Conservatives who were talking about their party creating chaos in UK as the means in order to bring in the change agenda. So the change agenda, that baton is with Keir Starmer at the moment, but this baton has also been with the Tories. So this is the Guardian report here, and this is going back around 2011, if my memory serves me correctly. And basically, we had the Tory MP warning about the fact that they were going to bring in chaos as a means of changing the country. And that comment by Nick Bowles was also reinforced by parliamentary candidate Danny Kruger at the time. So 2 witnesses saying that chaos was going to be used to change UK. No dialogue, of course, with the public. And let's bring us to this classic UK column newspaper headline back in the time. I think that's 2011 there, top right. We labelled the existing incumbents domestic terrorists. We described them as the cabal destroying Britain with big society, media gagged, secret courts, the NHS wrecked, military betrayed, paedophiles being protected, the police threatened, and genocide overseas. All of that, of course, only possible with the banking corruption and fraud. And I think we were absolutely spot on. So underneath this, we need to look at what is driving politics. And of course, alongside the World Economic Forum, we now know we've got a very powerful Fabian agenda. But of course, we've also got a lot of very powerful charities, such as the charity Common Purpose. Let's end that segment there. For people who are supporting the column, we can only do what we're doing with your help and support. So for anybody else who isn't yet on board, you can make a donation through the UK Column website, or you can join us via a monthly or an annual membership, or take out a lifetime membership. purchases through the shop, of course, help us. And we also have Clive de Carle's healthcare products, and we make a small percentage on those. Now, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we've got The Truth About ME coming out. And Diane, you took part in this interview with Catherine and Dr. Liz Evans. Just tell us a little bit.
Yes, thanks, Brian. This was an interesting conversation for sure. I would like to note that today is World ME Day. ME stands for myalgic encephalomyelitis. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Some people also call it chronic fatigue syndrome or CFS, but they are actually distinctly different conditions and diagnoses. They have similar symptoms. And I will say that in the last few years, people have also associated these conditions with so-called, and I say this in scare quotes, long COVID. So we had this discussion of people who watch UK Column will be familiar already with Dr. Liz Evans. She's been on previously. She's a qualified doctor. She's also the head of the medical ethics organization in the UK. This entire week, according to the UK's ME Association, is leading ME Awareness Week. So this is the perfect time to be broadcasting this interview. And we'll also be talking about Catherine's book, which is right here, called The Truth About ME. It's a fabulous, very emotional story of what she went through over the past 11 years as she attempted to recover and continue to manage her condition, Brian.
Okay, Diane, thank you very much for that. And let's also mention that coming up, that's the May Bank holiday, the 23rd to the 26th of May in Gilgarran, Cumbria. We've got the Stand in the Light event. This has been a fantastic event. UK Column has been previously. Unfortunately, we aren't able to attend this year, but we wish the Stand in the Light team the very best with that event. And we're sure that the many, many people who are going to go are going to have a great time. I remember well being told by people there last year that it was wonderful to be able to talk to people and not worry about what you said or how you said it. So a lot of the beauty of that event is to be with like-minded people, relaxing, laughter, hopefully a lot of sunshine, but it should be a lot of fun. And I've got another one here, Truth Tellers. This is you, Ben, I believe. Is that correct?
It is. Brace yourselves. It's truth time on the UK Column, and we need some help. So we're going to bring these people in. This was an event that happened last week. Truth Tellers, the Sir Harry Evans Investigative Journalism Summit 2025, including Tina Brown, Alistair Campbell, James Carville, Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, Krishna Guru Murthy, James Harding, who I spoke about earlier, and I might bring him back into this in a moment. Zanny Minton-Bellows from The Economist, Sir Mark Thompson, the big beasts of legacy media getting together and basically talking to themselves about each other and doing it in an echo chamber, and BBC editors interviewing their own bosses in a room in North London. And you do actually get the sense that these people, some of them certainly, do actually believe what they're saying. You know, they're drinking their own Kool-Aid, I think. So the indoctrination runs incredibly deep. So this was a big showpiece event for the international media community. It was held at RIBA, so the Royal Institute of British Architects. Beautiful building, actually, slap bang in the middle of media land, basically out the back door of the BBC studio, right? So this was slap bang in the middle of BBC territory. And unsurprisingly, they were actively involved in supporting the day as well. So BBC Verify, those great truth tellers that we always bring up on this programme. They were supporting it alongside The Observer, we spoke about earlier, who appear to be controlled in the background by the powers behind the Israeli state, as well as a bunch of philanthropic groups, the Postcode Lottery Group, Sigrid Rousing Trust, the Ford Foundation, who we spoke about earlier on this year, who are heavily invested in the international media ecosystem. There were some actually quite interesting speakers here. They had the chief executive of Substack. He was there. That was quite an eye-opening session. We'll provide a link. Suggest going to watch it. Probably not the whole thing, because it's about 8 hours long, but there are a few interesting points. One of which was one of the flagship sessions about rebooting legacy media. Let's have a little listen to how that was presented.
your host, Jon Stewart, captain of this dying medium.
How long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got to make a speech.
So they're in trouble. Revenues are collapsing, trust is collapsing, AI is disrupting them, and let's be honest, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people, could it? It was quite a good panel, that one, actually. I won't show any clips from the people speaking because there's just too much to go into, to be perfectly honest. But it was actually summed up really beautifully by Zanny Menton-Beddoes, editor-in-chief of The Economist, who said, "We need to make sure tomorrow's viewers and listeners know about CNN, the BBC, The Economist, and know that's where you have to go to get truth." That was her summary at the end.
Ben, they are clearly, am I allowed to use the expression, wetting themselves on UK column news? I think I have. This is really, people say to us, where is the good news? Well, today we're giving you the good news because not only are we showing that people are seeing through the political agenda, we're now starting to really dig into the machinery driving this terrible political system that we live in. And here is the media admitting that they are on the ropes. So if people want to know what the good news is that the efforts of many, many people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people probably over social media, is now having a real effect on the legacy media. Yep. It's fantastic, Ben.
It is. It's great news. Yeah, they've completely lost control of the narrative. And that panel, you had Sir Mark Thompson from CNN, who representing the big corporate advertiser market. You had Deborah Turniss from the BBC representing effectively the state. People talk about the BBC like it's distinct from government, but it's not. It's just government. Yeah, it's funded through taxation. That's government by definition, actually. And Zanny Menton-Beddoes, who I mentioned, who effectively represents the global predator class, right? And, you know, they neglect to mention this stuff. Right. So actually, if we just jump back to that video, we had Deborah Turniss presenter. She's the chief executive of BBC News. She's saying that AI distortion is the new threat to trusted information. It's the AI. My view is it's the BBC, actually, which is a threat to trusted information. Similar thing with Mark Thompson. He's saying that there's a revolution happening. I'm not particularly bothered what he has to say about the media, to be honest with you. What I'd like to know is what he knew about Jimmy Savile when he was Director General of the BBC. That would be a good place to start. If we were really interested in truth, you know, I think that would be a good question to ask Mark Thompson, but that wasn't getting asked at the Truth Tellers Conference. And then finally, Zanny Menton-Beddoes, Editor-in-Chief of The Economist, and essentially a member of the global predator class herself. Like, she doesn't just represent their interest. Like, she goes to the Bilderberg meetings basically every year. Right. I'm not sure if she's on the steering committee for it. She may well have been at some point, but, you know, that's whose interest she's representing. And that's before you dig into the fact that The Economist itself is 26% owned by the Rothschild family, 46% owned, something like that, by the Agnelli family, the Italian industrialists. So this is the voice of institutions, the establishment. Yeah. Talking about the woes that they are currently experiencing. Right. So this was the kind of the meta narrative, the big top level story, but also local news, hugely important. They're reporting here that it's been decimated. 2 local newspapers are closing every week on average. This is a huge threat to civil liberties. There is a total vacuum that's appeared around scrutiny of politicians. Voters are feeling disenfranchised, corruption is on the rise, and divisions are appearing in society. And again, what they fail to mention is that most of this stuff is being caused by the people behind this conference, certainly the people behind the 3 titles that I was just talking about a moment ago, right? They used this term a news desert where green shoots are sprouting up. We talked about organisations like The Mill previously, up in the top left there, who've done a great job of savaging Roger Mears' reputation up in Manchester, who was pointing out what was going on with the grooming gangs. But apparently there is a renaissance happening around local news. And to find out a bit about how that's actually happening, let's now listen to the Chief Executive of the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, Rosina Breen.
You're focusing on a more collaborative form of journalism. You go out, you find communities, you involve yourself with them. This is a new model, which you've sort of been one of the pioneers of getting that impact through. Can you take us through what brought that new way of thinking how journalism can work?
I mean, the Bureau has a long time history of innovation since before my day, and we do UK investigations, international investigations and local investigations. And I really wanted to start with a quote by Terry Albury, who was on a panel at the Logan Symposium where Akash and I were last week. He's the FBI whistleblower. He said, "The fire has always been there, we just haven't been paying attention." And I think there are fires across every constituency across the UK. And so accountability journalism really matters. And the thing that really I think about is, who are we working alongside in order to surface the stories? Often we might parachute into locality to tell the story where we know what the top line is. And yet, if you go into communities and ask the questions, that will inform where the accountability gap is. So, one, there is an editorial reason for doing what we do. And the second is, I was really struck by Anand on the first panel who was talking about audience relevance. We have a crisis in trust in public institutions in the UK. That's across politics, that's also across the media. People feel disenfranchised. You know, I was running the largest network newsroom outside of London. I started that job on the week of the EU referendum for the BBC. We were an output that was very close to the audience, and so we felt that the vote would go Brexit. I'm not making a political point, but politics is about policy, and policy is about people. So unless we are actively working with people, not to follow an agenda, but to follow the facts, we're not going to bring them along with us. And civic engagement, skills, spotting misinformation and disinformation has never been more important. So there is a way of approaching journalism that can be meaningful and holistic and not worthy, but actually community trust is everything, especially today.
Well, Ben, I did sit here chuckling while that video clip was running to hear Rosina Breen, I think the lady's name is there, saying, well, to be proper journalists, we've got to get out there and track stories down, and it's better if we actually meet the people, and it's better if we tell the truth. She's just discovered this.
Yes.
It's mind-blowing what's coming out of this lady's mouth, because basically any journalist should know that if you want to be reporting correctly, you've got to engage with people. You've got to check the sources of your information. But in 2025, she's just discovered this after working, I think it was with the BBC newsroom.
For about 15 years.
15
BBC,
years
yes.
ago. So the stupidity and the arrogance of these people is breathtaking. But more good news, because she's admitting that BIJ, as one of the media companies, is also on the ropes.
It is on the ropes, but also it's this very odd model. So that was Geordie Grieg, I think his name is, the editor of The Independent, who asked her the question at the start there. He says, you're developing this new model. And there is this new model emerging, because essentially she's based inside the M25, right? So you've got these supposedly investigative journalist institutions, of which the Bureau of Investigative Journalism is one example, right? And there's a bunch of these that sit in the metropolitan centre, and then they kind of go into communities, and she actually used the word parachute in. We go in there and we correct disinformation and misinformation, and we basically engage in narrative reinforcement. I really don't think she understands it like that, right? But if you go and look at their website, you can pull these things apart very, very quickly. Yeah. So this is the Bureau of Investigative Journalism homepage. What's the big story? It's the poor content moderators at Meta, right? So the people that are censoring your speech, we need to feel sorry for them, essentially, right? And it's all about reinforcing the climate change narrative, the censorship narrative, and they're working with The Independent, they're working with The Guardian. You can see the logos at the bottom of the screen there. Yeah, so this is kind of like these titles of outsourced investigative work to a third party, and then that work is then being presented back as if it's come from that title. This feels a little bit like that kind of wolf in sheep's clothing thing I was talking about before, right? And then you go and look at who's funding this. Well, blimey, it's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it's the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, and Lankelly Chase, and also Open Society's Paul Hamlin, the Pears Foundation, who we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, who are very, very closely involved with Full Fact and extraordinarily powerful, right? These are the people that want to own truth. And they have flooded what should be a pure space of investigative journalism and taken complete ownership of it, right? And actually local news is now completely owned by global capital, just like the rest of the mainstream media ecosystem.
The lid's coming off, though, Ben, and reinforce that for viewers. Monday, the 12th of May, 2025, we have got the legacy media admitting it's on the ropes. So let's keep the initiative going. And if you're not supporting UK Column, support UK Column and help us put more pressure on the team. Now, Diane, let's bring you back. And grey skies in Plymouth today, but other people very concerned at what they see in the sky.
Yes, understandably so, Brian. Mike, if we could just please scroll through some photographs that I'd like to show the viewers before I talk about this. These were some photos that were sent to UK Column from a member down in Kent, and there's a variety of photos here from the Maidstone areas you can see there. This particular person sent these to us because he wanted us to expose what he observes as going on. But what I want to do is sort of, as Ben mentioned, BBC Verify Mariana Spring. As viewers might remember, we have UKC Verify, so I'm starting to bring this back to actually verify what is really going on. As we look at these photos, yes, we can see that there are white lines in the skies, but can we verify what is actually happening in the UK skies, or can we possibly verify what's going on in the skies in other countries? So this viewer wrote to his MP about his concern about chemtrails that he was seeing as documented by his own photographs here. And he sent along this official letter, which he got in response. And so Helen Grant is his MP, and Helen Grant got a response back from Kerry McCarthy, who is the Ministry for Climate from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. So I just want to read out this letter. It says, "Dear Helen, thank you for your email to the Department of Environment for Rural Affairs on 3rd of September on behalf of a constituent regarding chemical spraying, brackets chemtrails, in UK airspace. Your correspondence has been passed to this department, and I am responding as this matter falls under my ministerial portfolio. There's no deliberate chemical spraying activity going on anywhere in UK airspace, apart from regulated aerial spraying of pesticides and herbicides and agricultural practices. Crop spraying is always carried out at low altitude. Further details can be found at this link. We'll come back to that." And she went on to say, "There is no deliberate chemical spraying activity going on." Again, she says, chemtrails is a term some people apply to contrails, short for the white condensation trails seen behind aircraft, to claim evidence of deliberate chemical spraying in the atmosphere. Contrails are caused by the water vapor contained in hot exhaust gases condensing in the high, cold atmosphere where aircraft fly. More information on this can be found in an article on the government website. So let's take a look at these two links that she linked to in her letter. The first one is about aerial spraying permit arrangements. This is from the Health and Safety Executive. This is about basically how you regulate aerial spraying for plant growth, for example. And they give a template of what that might look like. I've got a sort of a screenshot of that as well, which just shows what it looks like if we are talking about this is how we apply to give a particular spray to make particular plants grow. So that is one thing that she's got there. That's the sample application plan. The other thing that she linked to was a website from UK Department for Transport. And this is where they answer some questions about what they consider to be chemtrails, contrails, and you can read the entire link. This will be in the show notes. And it asks what exhaust gases do aircraft emit, as well as water vapor, the primary exhaust emission. Jet engines emit carbon dioxide, small amounts of unburnt hydrocarbons, oxides of nitrogen, soot particles, and carbon monoxide. So such emissions are regulated by the International Aviation Organization. According to some reports, the next question asks, chemtrails contain barium or compounds of aluminum and silicon, often called aluminosilicates. And they said, we have no credible evidence of the release of chemtrails, but aluminosilicates are common in clay soils and a wide range of other minerals. Therefore, measurements in air and soils are dominated by the ground level sources of aluminosilicates, a hard word to say. The latest assessment of emissions from aircraft can be found in the most recent National Atmospheric Emissions Inventory report. And the final questions are there any ill health effects caused by contrails? There's no evidence that contrails cause health problems at the altitude that they are produced. The oxides of nitrogen and particulate matter, which can cause respiratory problems, become dispersed. And do contrails impact on climate change? Persistent contrail cirrus formed by aircraft can affect the reflection of solar radiation and therefore have an impact on the Earth's climate. Now, that report that I mentioned that linked in that response, we can look at that website. There are just various reports about greenhouse gases, carbon capture, and all of the other propaganda related to the climate scam. Now, what was interesting was something else that was claimed in this email from the viewer who sent this to us. They had the information that the Met Office had been involved in over 130 weather modification experiments that was reported in August of 2024. Now, depending on the search terms that I used to check this on Google's AI, just to see what Google would say, it first said in my first search that the office revealed that a large number of weather experiments exceeding 130 were actively underway in the UK. But if you look at my next search using slightly different words, it says in August 2024, the Met Office did not specifically reveal 130 weather modification events. So we have conflicting information. And so we have to really watch what the AI summaries tell us. The Met Office claims that atmospheric modification and geoengineering does take place in terms of research. They're talking about computer modeling. They're claiming that they do not engage in adding substances to the atmosphere in order to modify it. And the difference between geoengineering is that geoengineering is the larger issue of where they're trying to impact on climate change. Weather modification is very specific local actions such as cloud seeding, which does alter the weather. So the Telegraph reported back in 2024 that in Dubai, there was a full year's rainfall that happened in one day. And they talked to some people from the UAE's meteorology service, and that was said, well, they believe that it was in fact caused by cloud seeding. Now, who was doing the cloud seeding was a group of British academics from the University of Reading. And so they can't say here, they haven't said that this cloud seeding is taking place here in the UK, but they are fully aware and fully admitting that they were responsible for this cloud seeding. Let's take a look at a video from Professor Martin Anbaum from the University of Reading saying what he had to say about this event.
It is indeed true that that in the Emirates there's an operational cloud seeding program, and it's clear that for an arid region like that, they really want to target the few clouds that they have and to make those clouds rain, because quite a lot of the time those clouds do not produce rain. In this particular case, in fact, no cloud seeding occurred. In this particular case, it was a well-predicted storm. People knew there would be severe rain. the authorities in the Emirates knew there would be strong rain, and they did not do any seeding operation during this particular event.
So he's not claiming any responsibility. However, there are different opinions on that. We can see back in 2017, the University of Reading started, or I believe this was the start of the funding from this UAE organization, which is called the Research Program for Rain Enhancement Science, or UAE REP as the acronym. And so we can see them there in the UAE participating in this. Here's an example publication with Professor Ambam as one of the authors, providing charge emission for cloud seeding aircraft. Basically, the first sentence of the abstract says that this, such as fog and clouds, offers a route to influence these properties. So what they're doing is trying to influence the natural abilities and things that fog and clouds do for us. The UAE REP is a large funding program that funds research around the world where these different countries and researchers will come in and literally do the cloud seeding to make rain happen in Dubai and throughout the UAE. You can see the strategic plan there where they're talking about being globally recognized research, but they do benefit it from themselves, obviously. And here we see more evidence of them talking about globalism and going into UN organizations and what we're doing with the overall climate agenda. So just to conclude this particular segment, I have a video here from a UAE REP YouTube channel. Here's Professor Ralph Berger. He is from South Africa, and he's talking about this issue.
Rolla, thanks so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate you sitting with us here. And look, you don't need me to tell you that UAE REP marking 10 years of advancing rain enhancement science. But given your international global perspective as well, just wonder whether you could sort of reflect on the achievements of UAE REP in the last 10 years, but also the impact it's having on global thinking when it comes to rain enhancement.
No, I agree with you. Over the last 10 years, the UAE has not only been advancing rain enhancement science, but it's really transformed our understanding of the atmosphere. It's been driving innovative solutions to some of our most pressing problems like water scarcity and climate resilience. And especially it's been doing that through science, cutting edge technology, and global collaboration. So, for example, I think one of the things that is most exciting to me about this project is it's exemplifying how we should be approaching these very sticky, complex problems, and that is through transformative science. If you look at the program, every aspect of it is dripping with science, from the very competitive funding calls, the independent scientific oversight, to the drive of the program to make sure that the results get published. It's really transformative.
It's lovely to hear that, but...
So what do you think, Brian? Is that lovely to hear?
It's very interesting to hear. And I'm going to say thank you very much for putting together this segment. There's a lot more to talk on it. Am I reassured by him saying it's dripping with science? No, I'm not reassured at all. And I don't think many people in our audience would be. But Diane, we're at the end of the news. So I'll just give you 10 seconds to sum up on this. We can talk about it more in extra coming up.
Yeah, I guess just to say that this is obviously part of the global agenda. And hopefully in extra, we will talk about the wonderful weekend of weather that we had and what happened in the media as a result of this amazing weather we had this weekend. So join us for extra.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Well, there's a lot of questions to be asked around this, and we will stay on the case. But of course, it's one of many ways in which world population are being attacked. And we have to make sure that we keep our eyes on all the balls that are causing us problems in today's world in 2025. We must end there. So Diane and Ben, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you also to Professor Gloria Moss. For UK column members, we will have extra in a few minutes, and we'll continue a little bit more with some of the spraying saga, and also, of course, the Fabians. So join us for that. That's it for today's news. Huge thank you to everyone who's watched wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye.